Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we have a fantastic guest with us, host of Coin Stories, which is my favorite podcast. Natalie, how are you doing today?
Thank you so much. That's so nice. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Me too. I'm excited.
You were born in Poland, you moved to the US, and you've done 4 semesters in Florence. Am I correct?
Yes, I lived in Italy. That's actually one of my majors is Italian studies. Not a lot of people know that, but I fell in love with Italy. I considered living there. I still think about it. So, see.
Amazing. I was about to ask how was your Italian, but you already answered me.
Ho vissuto a Firenze e ho studiato per 2 anni.
Bravissimo. I love it. I like it.
I love to try to practice because when you don't use it, you lose it. And I loved speaking Italian. At one point, I was very fluent. And now I have to kind of translate in my head, the same with Polish. But I love Italy. And it's funny because people say, go somewhere else, branch out. And every time it comes for vacation, I just want to go back to Italy.
How have you decided to become a podcaster? I mean, how everything started?
I was a journalist. I was working in television news for many years. And when podcasts started to come out, I really enjoyed the format because when you work in television news, you pretty much work all day, 8 or 9 hours to produce a minute and a half or 2 minutes of television. So, you have this experience throughout the day or the week and you learn a lot and you do a lot of interviews, but what the audience ends up seeing is very, very short and you leave a lot on the cutting room floor. So I always loved long form interviews and I loved podcasts because you got to really get to know someone and learn a lot of the background and context. So I started listening to podcasts probably around 2015, 2016, and I bounced around this idea of having one myself, but I didn't know what it would be about. And I actually started a podcast before Coin Stories called Career Stories in 2018. And I would interview people who found success in different industries about how they reached that level, how they reached success, what they had to overcome. I talked to a lot of other television journalists. I talked to people who were social media influencers, just about where they were from and how they built their careers. And I always loved people's origin stories and biographies and autobiographies. So then I got into Bitcoin in 2017. I started to invest, not understanding it. And I really started learning about it after I read the Bitcoin Standard. And I was doing my other podcasts at the time, and I had a mentor who I would talk to about Bitcoin and investing and everything happening in the economy. And he goes, "Why don't you interview people in Bitcoin, for your podcast? Why don't you do a season or just start interviewing the people that you're actually learning from and talk to them about Bitcoin and how this could change the world?" So I thought, why not? I'll just do a season. I'll do Coin Stories for my Career Stories podcast. Maybe I'll do 12 episodes with some of the biggest names if they'll talk to me about where they come from and why they believe in Bitcoin. And lo and behold, 2 years later, it's my full-time job. I'm podcasting as a career. So I hope that serves as a little bit of inspiration because sometimes your hobby or your passion project can turn into your full-time job. And I'm just so grateful to be doing this.
You said so many amazing things. Well, first of all, I'm super glad you've done it because we would have all missed out a lot because I love your podcast. Like I said, you spoke with some of the best, like Michael Saylor, Cathy Wood. All these people are incredible legends. We're able to share their stories on your podcast. Some sort of like a Dale Carnegie, right? So it's like collecting data from successful people and then publish some sort of a content.
It's actually really fun to go back to the first ones I recorded because for those out there who are watching the space, I literally got the origin stories of a lot of these great people, like Michael Saylor, where he grew up, what he was like as a kid, what he wanted to be when he grew up. The same with Lynn Alden, Preston Pysh, Jeff Booth. I just find these backstories so interesting because I think a lot happens to you before maybe people know who you are or you're in the space. What were people like when they were kids and where are they from and what careers did they pursue? I don't know. I just find all that stuff fascinating.
I completely agree. And I have to say for me, I'm just in my beginning of my journey, right? This is just like, I've just literally started and I can see its benefit also myself because every time I record a video, of course, I rewatch it. I do some edits, like minor touches, nothing too crazy. But I learn about myself. I learn about me every time because the way I speak, and I'm learning how to correct myself. Like I used to say a lot. And then as soon as you start editing yourself out, it's like, it would be much easier if I stop saying it.
Yeah, It's funny you say that because when I was working in TV news, it's funny because I don't like watching myself, kind of like how people probably don't like to hear the sound of their own voice. but you have to, if you want to improve, you have to see what you're doing and kind of critique yourself and also ask for feedback so that you improve every single time. So it's funny because I'm sure a lot of people feel that way, right? Like you don't want to watch yourself, but it really helps.
Yeah, and there are so many barriers. Then you have to, well, first of all, you have to have the courage to say, I'm just going to do it. Then you
Yeah.
reach out to people like you, super pro, and I'm like, okay, I don't know how to do it, but I'm just going to wing it. Then
Yeah.
you have to rewatch it, and then you have to publish it in the ether,
Mhm.
right? So it's out there, and people are going to comment and they're going to watch it. And I completely agree with you. I think we are in this time where short content is super powerful, but I
Mhm.
love long conversations. Maybe you are into a drive, you're to the gym, you are into some sort of a setup where you have time to spare, and you want to, maybe before going to bed or as soon as you wake up while doing a workout. There are so many points in our day where podcasts are coming in, and I enjoy it a lot.
I love long form content because you learn so much. I love learning, and it gives you an opportunity to really get to know someone.
Why would you go into Bitcoin?
Sure. So the first place I always tell people to go to is the Bitcoin Standard. Read that book. That book honestly changed my life because for a while I was invested in Bitcoin, but I really didn't understand it, and I kind of resisted learning about it because I don't know, I thought it was going to be difficult and very techy, and I don't have a computer science background. I didn't study finance, so I didn't have that catalyst that I needed in order to really go down the rabbit hole. And when I read that book, it was like this aha moment because I connected so many dots while reading it of this is why so many of the things are going wrong in society and with our world, and why some of the things that I struggled with actually happened. So for me, I had a pain point because my family was first generation. They lost their home and went bankrupt and went under during the great financial crisis. And I never understood why that happened or how until I learned about Bitcoin. And it made me start really thinking about the future in a more positive way because I didn't realize how sort of pessimistic I had become about the future. And I think part of that was because when you work in news, everything's very negative. We cover tragedies and disasters, and I was covering a lot of mass shootings, and everyone was becoming so politically polarized. So I feel like I was just surrounded by negativity. But also, just on the financial side, every single year it felt like it was harder and harder to attain financial security. Like the goalpost kept moving further and further away, and I would wonder, will I ever be able to afford a house? How is this going to work out? And then when I learned about Bitcoin and understood the financial system, I started to have a lot more hope. And I thought I have to accumulate some of this because it could really serve as the base layer for our future economy. It could serve as the future of money. And I really want a piece of that. And it made me really excited. So for people out there, I really urge them to start learning about it, and also, just have some skin in the game, have a little bit, spend what you might spend on a coffee, instead buy some Bitcoin and start learning about it because it's such a transformative technology. And I think we're so lucky to be at the very beginning point of it.
Yeah, super well said. I mean, sometimes when it's kind of same in my journey. I had to kind of look into what is money. How do
Mhm.
I save my
Yeah.
savings? How do I preserve my wealth? How do I make sure that in 10 years inflation would have eaten everything? If we move at 10% rate in 10 years, you've got nothing. And there are examples or places where inflation is super bad, and people actually they build things with money, right?
Yeah.
And they sell the thing itself because the money has been devalued so much.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how little we know about money. And
Mhm.
same, I read the Bitcoin Standard. The first one was Rich Dad Poor Dad from Kiyosaki. And
Mm.
then that led me to the Bitcoin Standard. And I was like, holy, I didn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
I thought having money in the bank and buying a house was a great decision.
Mhm.
And maybe I should rethink my strategy because at the end of the day, it's not really what I want. And like you said, it's so early, when you think about this technology and what it's capable for
Mhm.
and what it's going to provide for us and for society, it's
Mhm.
super interesting. And people sometimes stop and say, oh, well, Bitcoin has gone to 70,000 now in the 30s. It's too late. It's like, guys, we haven't even started.
I
This thing
know.
hasn't even started yet. Crazy how little we know. And like you said, maybe for us that we are invested, we speak to people in our kind of network. They are all Bitcoiners or they're passionate about blockchain. We can see through a different lens. But for someone who has zero exposure, they understand nothing. Maybe they read a couple of newspaper. They are
Right.
so far away from where we are, right?
Well, we're all later than someone to Bitcoin, but we're earlier than most people. I'm really inspired by that. And I do kind of compare it to the start of the internet. And I was very little. We were living outside of Chicago. And I remember my first computer and doing the dial up AOL, America Online, and having my first email account. And I don't think anyone at the time could have predicted how it would transform our lives, how it would transform the way people do business. And now it's the same, but with money. And I think that's incredible. So I want to be on the cutting edge and on the front of this wave, because it could change lives. And certainly our generation, millennials, as well as the ones after, they need it. They need it because there's so much debt. Everything's gotten so expensive. The cost of living has run away from them, and they need something like Bitcoin.
You had a segment on TV the other day. I've seen. I actually shared it on Twitter. Beautiful. You gave the example of Gen Z that they don't have, they don't have a way to save into anything. So of course, I don't see young people going and saving and buying gold because it's not as convenient as something digital. And if you are bullish in technology and digital, you cannot be bearish Bitcoin because it is the next step in the evolution. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, what is it you own really? Like you think you own your house, but you don't. The government is allowing you to have it, right? You think you have your gold into a bank somewhere, but it's not yours. So what do I have left? I mean, what do I own 100%?
Right, completely. Yeah. And you have to pay a lot to maintain your house, and you owe taxes on it every single year. And it makes me think of what's been recently talked about online. I think it was actually Michael Saylor, that talked about this for the first time, this idea of dematerializing everything. So Bitcoin dematerializes property or gold. And every time that something has been dematerialized, it's made it better, and it's opened it up, made it more accessible to billions of people around the world. We dematerialized music in the form of MP3s. We dematerialized information and communication in the form of the internet and emails. And every single time, that progression has been really, really important, opening up the doors and democratizing an industry or a technology to so many more people. And I think that that's what we're seeing in real time happen with Bitcoin. And we're dematerializing something like gold or property. And what's funny about gold is, even though it has been this very powerful store of value, because you can't just inflate it and make it on a whim the way you can with fiat, at the same time, gold has not performed very well in the last couple of decades. Stocks is where you want it to be, or real estate. And younger people just don't have the access and ability to purchase that because it's run away from them with regards to inflation, asset inflation. I think a lot of young people don't even know what an asset is because our education system does not teach us this. It doesn't teach us how to invest. And I think that things are really starting to change. And I think that Bitcoin is because it's going to eat into some of these different asset classes in chunks. So bonds, real estate, gold, equities, and even just a tiny percentage of any of those asset classes is a huge amount of appreciation for Bitcoin. So I think it's the most amazing asymmetric opportunity that we've ever had.
I completely agree. And I think the school system is growing employees, not entrepreneurs, as far as I've seen. I mean, I didn't go really far with my school education, so I probably shouldn't say anything because I don't know. But it feels like society where we're growing up. I mean, it depends, I suppose, what part of the planet, what kind of family you grow up in. But if I stop and I think, you gave the example of internet, I could not agree more. I was in my 20s when kind of everything started. I was kind of playing with my computer. I didn't know what I was doing. I was kind of connecting to the internet. My phone was busy. My mom was shouting, "Hey, I can't call anyone. Stop with that thing." There was no reason for me to be in the internet in the first place. And then fast forward a few years and the iPhone came up, and then you are connected always. And people don't even know. They don't even have to understand. Because most of the time, when a technology is new, there is always like a learning curve. It's difficult. You have to, my keys, okay, self-custody and exchange and the fiat and crypto and buy Bitcoin and then I have the Trezor. No, I use Ledger because it's the beginning. But give it a few more years when all the companies or some of the bigger companies are going to jump into the train, and then you don't even know you're using crypto because it is basically embedded into your lifestyle. I mean, I was talking to someone super young not long ago, and I was just trying to explain her, and I said, I remember back in the days when it was a movie night on a Friday, I had to go physically to a Blockbuster, right? Put my shoes, my coat, go to this place, which was renting tapes. And she was like, what are tapes? I was like, okay, so films into a different format, right?
Exactly. It dematerialized Blockbuster. Netflix did.
Exactly. And if you think about it, back in the days, Blockbuster, which was fighting Netflix, look what happens. Where are they? I think there is one, which is a museum kind of thing in somewhere in the US.
Yeah.
That's it. Think about Kodak with photography. Kodak actually invented digital photography. This is funny. Like they invented it, but it's like, no, people want to film. It's like, oh, really? Now you don't even buy the camera. Your phone is a camera. So technically, Apple has beaten everybody. So again, we're going towards that path over there. We're going to a place where people will have more digital interactions. They will exchange value via camera like we are doing now. So are we expecting people to exchange gold? Natalie, I'm going to send you via mail a little coin. It's just not how it's going to be, for sure.
Exactly. And when you think about it, the fact that we all inhabit this world, but we have to exchange currencies still at this ridiculous rate that's constantly changing. And a country could wake up one day and their currency is worth 50% of what it was the night before, just because of what the government chooses to do. I think it's kind of wild. Bitcoin kind of puts us all on one language and one protocol in the same way that the internet did, that we can use it and access it from anywhere, no matter where we come from. You can access and utilize this revolutionary technology that connects the whole world. So I don't know. I'm really inspired by what's going to happen in the future. And I'm curious what technologies are actually going to come out, because I was just watching this video online earlier today. I don't know if you saw it, by the company's called Humane, and they just released their AI pin. And I'm just like, oh my goodness, what are we going to be doing in 10, 20 years that we can't even think up or dream up? Because I wouldn't have thought of the iPhone when I was little. The fact that we'd have a computer in our hands, we could talk to it, it answers us, it translates. I just think it's so incredible. And going back to what you said, the marginal cost of production, technology is deflationary. Jeff Booth talks about that a lot. So how are you going to have a system that relies on inflation and all this credit and issuing more and more debt compete with this deflationary world of technology? Those two worlds are not compatible. And so Bitcoin is exactly what we need for that, to bridge that gap.
Code is law. So we don't even know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. She, he, they, we don't know, which is fantastic because you can't stop it. Like if there was a name behind or an address, it could be a target. We don't know. Fantastic. So the creator is unknown. Awesome. You can't stop it. And it's transparent. It's forever. You can't change it, which is awesome. And even if all these wasn't even enough, when you simply stop and think about, the bank doesn't have your money. So that's a problem, number one, because even if you think, oh, fiat is needed, but you don't have it. They don't have it. It's just a number on a centralized ledger, which they can change if they wish to. So there is definitely a problem there. So how do you solve it? I think this is going to open also another door, which is we will connect into a different level. I don't know if it makes sense what I'm saying, but there's going to be a different channel.
Yeah, I certainly think so. It's funny because when I think of things in the metaverse, I start to go, wait, this is going to be too much. And I need to hold off there, because we're losing so much of the real world. But that is where so much of this is going. People will be exchanging value for things that aren't even in the physical world, but in this metaphysical place. I just hope we don't end up like the characters in that Wall-E movie, where they're just orbiting around and sitting in front of a screen and eating, and they have really no life. So we've got to find a middle ground there. The other day I was at Disney World, and I went to go see one of the rides is called Soarin', where you get into this contraption and they make it seem like you're flying through California, and it feels so real, like the wind is blowing on you. And those types of experiences, I think, will feel more and more real, and you'll be able to do them from home. You'll be able to attend conference or not just conferences, but concerts, and kind of have like this situation and experience that feels real, even though it's all digital. On the flip side, I obviously just worry about the aspect of how much it's invading our lives in terms of surveilling and tracking us and taking in a lot of data. So I think it's going to be this interplay, but the idea that we don't have to do some of these very mundane tasks. I was watching an Amazon documentary the other day, and there are so many people in these warehouses that do things that definitely could be replaced by a machine, and so that it's not so monotonous for a human, because it's mindless work, just repetitive, and you have to go as fast as you can to just wrap boxes. If that can be replaced by a machine, and then those individuals are freed up to do something where it actually utilizes their mental brain power, I think we could enter into this very golden age of ideas, innovation, entrepreneurship. But the money at the base layer has to be solid, has to be something that we can retain our value in order to invest in things like that. Otherwise, it's going to be more and more of a rat race and people feeling like they'll never catch up. It's going to be more and more of that haves and have-nots, the poor versus the rich. And I don't want to see that. So how all of these different factors come together will be fascinating over the next couple of decades, I think.
I completely agree. I mean, and also there are some of those tasks that are super dangerous, right? So if you can place not a human doing it, not a human being doing that kind of dangerous part, it could be a fire, it could be a bomb to be dismantled, or whatever it might be. You can even also save or preventing people to die or getting injured while helping other people. So I completely agree. And I think there is definitely need of that. And if you think about society, if you go back in time, whenever there was good money or like sound money, society was thriving, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone was producing, was creating, because the money was at the base of society. What we've done, we basically gone opposite, where money doesn't even make. If you ask people what is money, they don't even know. They reply to you, "Oh, my bank account." Or
I know. And I think, as you mentioned, when tools come into existence that make it much easier to feel like you're safe keeping your Bitcoin and you have total control over it and you don't have to worry about losing it, I think that will exponentially increase adoption and trust in this whole system as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, think about credit cards, right? When Visa and MasterCard came out, I don't even know which one. I don't remember which one came out first, but people never wanted the plastic thing. It was, no. I want the cash in my pockets. I don't want this plastic thing with a number in to remember the PIN. Totally. I can't find the ATM. No. It's not convenient. I want money in my pocket. Mm-hmm. So I remember those companies used to say, well, if you put your money here, we're going to give you 10% cash back. We're going to give you these incentives. So they convinced everybody to use the card. I was talking to a guest I had on the podcast, and he said to me, it was a babysitting scenario where, the babysitter, she wanted to be paid for some duties, and he gave her cash, and she was like, no, I don't want cash. Such a headache. What am I going to do with cash? I have to go in the bank, deposit the cash, then use my phone, do the thing. Can you just send me the money digitally, right?
Yeah.
How fast that was from, I want to keep my money in my pocket because I don't trust the plastic thing, to don't even show me cash because it's a headache, right?
I know.
So what is the next step?
I know. Everyone's going to be asking for Bitcoin. Everyone's just going to want Bitcoin. That's what I think. Lightning.
Exactly. 21 million. Hello. So it's all about demand and supply, right? So sometimes when I talk to quote normal people, they don't even understand. It's like, yeah, but what do you mean? It's like, well, there is a limited amount. That's why it's valuable, because it cannot be produced. Even gold, which I don't hate, to be honest. Not long ago, they found a huge amount in Africa somewhere, and it was like, okay, how does it going to impact the market? Like if we found a huge amount, or maybe they will start mining it in space. Who knows?
Right. On an asteroid. I was fascinated by those stories. It's like, what?
Exactly. There's a company I was researching not long ago. They want to mine in the ocean, right? Because they say, oh, there's a lot of gold down there. We're going to put robots in there. And then when you talk to people, they say, oh, yeah, but Bitcoin is divisible in Satoshis. If you have one pizza and you chop the pizza in multiple parts, it's still one pizza.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna change the supply. It's still one pizza. You can chop it in so many micro parts, but it's still a pizza.
I know. Well, and I've said this on other shows. I wish we would move to the SATS standard, because 21 million to own just a fraction, I think, is not as exciting to people as owning 4 million sats. So I think we should all start talking in sats and have that be the way that we communicate, but we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think we are that far off. If you think about where we are now, like think about all those, I mean, BlackRock, ARK Invest, all those people are basically saying, we want to buy spot Bitcoin. So it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I think if it's not happening at the end of the year, it will be January 10 when the next deadline is going to be. And it's going to be interesting. Maybe you and me, like we fundamentally believe this thing is needed. But you have also people, they want to speculate, they want to make money, they want to sell when doubles, whatever. I don't care. They can do, you do you, boo, I do me. I just want to maintain my wealth. And my goal is to accumulate as much Bitcoin as possible I'm basically all in on
Yeah.
my bank account. I only have maybe 3 months cash. I mean, cash
Yeah.
in the bank, which is not even in my hands. So the bank has my money. Let's put it that way. But
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you zoom out, it is the best performing asset. And all of us wish we were in it earlier. But like I mentioned before, we are still so early. There are 8 billion people. And for the first time, this is an asset that anyone around the world can own. You can't just be in some random country in a small village and own Apple stock, right? You can't necessarily buy a fraction of a beautiful building in Manhattan, but you can own a fraction of a Bitcoin anywhere in the entire world. I think that's so powerful. And I can't even imagine what this could turn into. I know that there's going to be challenges and obstacles along the way. I think it'll be interesting to see how central banks and governments overall react. I think here in the United States, they're going to allow it and integrate it into the system, but they're going to try to have as much surveillance on it as possible. So that's what we have to fight, and we have to create more privacy tools, in my opinion, for sure. But I think it's like the internet. They had to embrace it. They had no choice. And also strategically, it's a good thing. And it could boost your prosperity, your national security. I think every nation will find a way to do it, except for the completely authoritarian ones that want their citizens to have absolutely no rights.
I agree. And if you think about CBDCs, so central bank coins, they are advertising Bitcoin for free, right? Because like you said in the beginning, technology is neutral. Technology is neither evil nor good. It depends on how we use it.
Yeah.
And those CBDCs, they have the power to do some terrible things as well as do some good things. So when they will action their plan to control and command, well, then thank you very much. That's free advertisement,
Yeah.
They might be able to say, oh, this thing is banned, this thing is blocked, but not everyone is doing it. Like if you think about the UAE, the Middle East, where I'm now at the minute, it's so freaking open to the blockchain. I mean, here I pay my dentist in crypto. You can go and buy a car, a luxury good. You can buy a property. It's so open to these things.
Wow.
And it's incredible. And if someone is tightening, someone else is opening it. Like think about Asia, Hong Kong now is opening. There is going to be so many places that are going to say, oh, you know what? You guys are closing the door on crypto? No problem. We're going to open it. And all the people that are talented entrepreneurs are going to go there and they're going to start building there. And then they will miss out. You can fight it if you want to, but I don't think it's going to work in your favor.
I completely agree. And one thing I've talked about because of my former industry journalism is how even the legacy most trusted news sources have been skeptical of some of the most transformative technologies, including cars and electricity. The New York Times would report on how every house is going to catch on fire. They didn't think that airplanes would be able to fly. And then a week later, the Wright brothers took off on their first flight. They poo-pooed the internet. They said that wasn't going to be transformative. So you really can't listen to all the headlines out there because technology is going to move in the direction it's going to move, and you want to be on that train. You don't want to be complacent on something like this.
There's going to be people like me and you that will look into it because they're passionate about, and of course we are super advocating about decentralization, transparency. But majority of the people, they don't care. They just want to know what is in for them, what is in for me. Why should I go and hold my plastic card in my pocket as opposed to having cash? What is the advantages? And I'm sure we will see in the next 5 years or so a bunch of entrepreneurs building on things, and people are going to automatically shift into it and they don't even know. Like when you take out your phone from your pocket, it could be a Samsung or an Apple, it doesn't matter. You don't need to understand how the phone is built and how it's connecting to the 3G or 5G. You just use it because they made it easy, right? So we're not there yet. Hence why we have an opportunity, because opportunity by definitions are when you go in prior everybody else.
I completely agree with you because network effect is so powerful. And when something's convenient and enough people are using it and you want to be a part of that network, then you don't need to go down to the sand and understand everything, how the car works, how the engine works, how the iPhone works. I think that it will be the same with Bitcoin. We're the early ones. So we want to learn about exactly how mining works and the consensus mechanism and difficulty adjustment. But later on, people will, be born, have Bitcoin, and not even think twice about how it works, probably.
Do you buy into the 4-year cycle? I mean, where do you think we are now with Bitcoin?
I don't know that I do. I think obviously the halvings play into the fact that the supply is being restricted and fewer Bitcoin are entering into circulation every 4 years. So that impacts the price naturally if there's more and more demand. But at the same time, we've seen some really unprecedented things related to just liquidity and markets and the financial system in general. And no one could have predicted the pandemic and how they were going to exponentially increase the money supply and accelerate the amount of debt that they were going to go into. And that obviously played into all of this. So I don't know, because I think that we're still heading toward a cliff. I think that what we've done is unsustainable, and it was accelerated by the response to the pandemic, and we're sort of able to hide some of that because around the world every central bank did the exact same thing and inflated. But there are consequences for these actions, and there were so many malinvestments made and there was so much slush in the system that we've seen start to drain out, but we really haven't seen the full effects of it yet. So I think that we're going to hit something, we're going to have an event horizon that we cross, and then after that they're going to have to respond with printing more and more money. And these cracks along the edges of our actual system just put a greater spotlight on why we need Bitcoin, because if we just allow this current system to collapse, then that's bad for everyone involved, right? No one wants austerity and a Great Depression and everyone losing everything in a deflationary bust. At the same time, if we keep inflating, then you're going to have more and more of that, 5 people owning all the wealth and everyone else being serfs and slaves. So you have to have something that bridges and makes this transition peaceful and slower. It slows down the impact. And that is what Bitcoin is. It's sort of this buffer, this bumper system that we can have so that the blow of the old system collapsing is not as harsh.
I agree. And I think I'm going to say something a little bit controversial, but I think one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. And when we try to put it together with fiat, I think we are losing the core of why Bitcoin was invented. The main thing from my perspective is to make sure that wherever I invest my money, like my wealth, it stays at least at pace. It doesn't consume or destroy itself. I feel like there is a gate and there is a lot of people at the gate, and the guy with the key or the person with the key is about to open it. So
yeah, for sure.
It's going to be fun to see what's going to happen, for sure. Thank you so much. It's been absolutely great having you on the show today. Super
This has
grateful.
been so much fun. Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. Grazie mille.